Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm very excited to bring you a review for the new Transformers Legacy Core Class Iguanus. Iguanus is one of 3 new Core Class figures coming in Legacy, and he's coming alongside Skywarp, which is a recolor of the Kingdom Core Class Starscream toy, and then Hot Rod, who was also previously released in Kingdom. So out of the 3, Iguanus is the only one that's an all-new mold, and he is a blend of the motorcycle alt mode that belonged to the inner robot of the Iguanus Pretender from Generation 1, and then instead of a regular robot mode, he gets one based on the Pretender shell. So he's not a proper Pretender, he doesn't have the shell, the whole gimmick. He is just a simple, two-form Transformer. Now, personally, I'm very, very disappointed by this, that Hasbro still doesn't feel confident enough in the Pretender concept to give us actual functional Pretenders, but that doesn't mean that this is by any means a bad toy. In fact, from what I've seen so far, it looks quite good. That being said, if you've seen my reviews before, you know this goes. We're going to take a look at Iguanus' packaging, then we'll open it up, we'll see the instructions, and we'll see Iguanus himself in both vehicle and robot modes. Naturally, I'll be doing plenty of group shots and comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll get my final thoughts. So Iguanus comes in what is now your standard Core Class packaging, consisting of a little box with a peg flap on top, and you get a little plasticless window right here where you can see the robot. Luckily mine is undamaged and not missing any pieces, which means he's luckier than some copies that have been floating around out there. You can see up top you get artwork of his alternate mode, firing a laser from his included weapon. And then on the side you get nice artwork of his Pretender or robot mode, firing lasers from his eyeballs. Apparently he fires lasers from his eyes. And then on the back, we get renders of the toy in both vehicle and robot modes. He takes 15 steps to transform, which is quite good for a Core Class toy, so you know that he's not, a super simplistic, boring figure. He should be quite fun to transform. And then, if we flip it here, we get a really, really tiny version of the Decepticon Legacy side panel. Here we get to see Iguanus' instruction sheet, and it's a little thing, just like other Core Class toys. So you get the render of the character, the name, all your branding. Unfold this, we get a quick little how-to for putting his weapon in his hand, and then we go straight to the transformation from robot to lizard-like motorcycle. And it shows you where to store the weapon on top. Here's the QR code, for anyone that was wondering. It's not on the packaging. I guess for Core Class, they're going to put it on the instructions, so that's cool enough. And then the instructions for combining the 3 weapons that come with Hot Rod, Iguanus, and Skywarp into one big sword. And we'll get a look at that when we do Skywarp's review. So, yeah, not very big, but covers everything you need to know. And now we get to see Iguanus' vehicle mode, and like I said, it's a motorcycle, but it has a lot of very reptilian motifs because the robot mode is basically an anthropomorphic lizard. So it's very interesting. The colors really pop. You have this very flat purple and then these very shiny reds and golds, and then you also get this pale, greenish color for the windshield. You get a Decepticon symbol right there. Here's the weapon on top, which, because it's in a round peg, can just kind of, spin around like a turret. Here's, I guess, what's supposed to be the seat. So this thing doesn't actually have handlebars like a real-life motorcycle would, but I guess you could kind of consider it like a Seibertronian vehicle mode where they wouldn't necessarily need handlebars. You got your spinning wheels here, and the wheels are actually painted this bright red, which is kind of cool. They look nice. Of course, it also means that, if you keep it in this mode, that the paint will probably come off over time. The wheels do spin very well. They actually have this little, what's the word I want to use? Clicking thing going on here. You might be able to hear that. But they do roll well, and they're thick enough to where the vehicle will just stand up on its own. You don't need to have a kickstand or anything. It'll still fall over if you bump it or shake it, but just from a static position, you can get it to stay up, and it works pretty well. So yeah, the vehicle mode, it's definitely bizarre looking. I mean, it is, a cross between like a lizard and a motorcycle, which on the one hand is weird, but it's also, I find it kind of cool. I like the way this actually came out. It might not be for everybody, but seeing as the Pretenders never had very realistic looking vehicle modes anyway, he's just kind of doing what he's always done. Okay, now we're going to transform Iguanus. So if you haven't already, remove the weapon and just set it aside. And the first thing we're going to do is pull his feet off of the hind wheel. You can see they plug in with a 5mm port. Pull it off the hind wheel and off the tail, because the knee area tabs into the tail. And I have to say, it's a very tight connection, so just kind of be careful with it. Very, very tight fit there. So I would get the foot free first, and kind of put one finger on the tail here, one finger on the knee, and just pull them apart. So you get them nice and separated like that. Straighten the legs out. Rotate the feet to a flat position. You're going to spin them around 180, and then spin the knees around 180. A lot of rotating of the legs here. So you get this. Then you're going to pull the robot hands off of the front wheels. They attach the same way with a 5mm port. They also plug into this little area right here, so you just got to separate it from all that. Luckily that connection's not as tight as the legs. Alright, you're going to rotate the elbows inward, like so. Then you're going to take this guy, kind of rotate it to the side, bring this to the side, and then rotate this up. So you create this, like, shoulder wheel backpack thing. It's pretty cool. And you take this front section, you rotate it back, which is going to untab it from the chest. So you're lifting that one hinge and folding this hinge backwards. And then you're just closing this over the motorcycle parts. And these tabs are going to go in these slots here for those wheel halves. So it'll hold the whole backpack together and keep it nice and solid. And lastly, you spin the waist around. And there it is. Here is our Pretender Shell inspired robot mode for Iguanus. Very Ninja Turtles character looking. Of course, we can go ahead and give him his weapon. He's only got little 3mm ports in his hand, so you got to use this handle. So just flip it upside down. It'll go. There we go. And he gets this thing, which looks like a little blaster with some sort of spikes sticking off the end. A little weird looking, but definitely better than Skywarp's weapon. And check him out. He is, in my opinion, very, very cool. He does a good job of blending the character's classic Pretender Shell details with details from his inner robot and vehicle modes, like namely the wheels here on the back. I think he looks fantastic. Like, yes, I am utterly disappointed that he's not an actual Pretender. I was really hoping for actual updates to the Pretenders. But Hasbro seems to have deemed that not profitable or not practical in some way. Personally, the way I would attempt to pull that off is I would sell the inner robots as standalone figures, probably like deluxe class, maybe Voyager for like the real big characters like Thunderwing. Sell them as just Transformers. And, spruce them up, right? Like, the inner robots for Pretenders were never very pretty to look at. They're very simplistic. It usually had, like, 2 colors to them. That was about it. So, spruce them up. Make them look nice. Make them look like fully-fledged Transformers that could stand on their own. And then separately, through something along the lines of, RED, or maybe even do a collaboration with Super 7. Because they like to make, Pretenders and Action Masters and stuff anyway for their Ultimates line. Some way have these articulated Pretender Shells that can also function on their own as just a standalone, like, non-transforming action figure, but, mold them in a way to where the inner robot can go inside of it. Boom. That way, people have a choice. If they only care about the Pretender Shell, they can just buy the Pretender Shell for, the cost of an RED or Super 7 figure, depending on which route they go. And then if they want the inner robot, because they just want a transforming robot, or they want to complete the set, they can buy that too. Gives people a choice. That way, you don't have to have this exorbitantly expensive, total package that a lot of people might be turned off by. You can let people choose one or the other, or if they have the money and they want the Pretender bad enough, do both. I wish they would have gone that route. I really do. Because as phenomenal as this guy is, it's still never going to scratch that itch for me, you know what I mean? Okay, I'll go ahead and toss that rant to the side and get back to our guy here. So let's look at his posability. His head is on a ball joint, and the articulation's a little bit limited just because of the shape of his head and how wide all this is. but he can look, you know, back and forth and can move the head up and down a little bit. Got ball-jointed shoulders, ball-jointed elbows. The wrists don't articulate, but they are well sculpted. Does have a full waist swivel. That's a little tight, but it does turn all the way. Ball-jointed hips, which can collide with this area a little bit, but not too bad. Ball-jointed knees, and ball-jointed ankles, which is actually a rarity for core class figures. I think the only other ones that have the ball-jointed ankles are Rat Trap and Vertebrake and her recolor Dracodon. And their ball joints aren't really great. Like, the socket's really deep set, so you don't get a whole lot of movement. This guy, especially because of his transformation, where his, you know, ankles tilt like that far, he gets a lot of movement out of these, so he is an incredibly posable little figure. And yeah, I mean, between the amazing sculpted detail, the paint, and the posability, I mean, he's as good as figures, you know, larger than himself. Like, this could have easily been upscaled to a deluxe and still felt very satisfying. So I like him. I think he's very clean. You know, he's got the backpack, but it's a cool looking backpack because it looks like some sort of a jetpack or something. It's nice and flush up against him. He's still got the tail. I mean, look at this guy. He's got ports there, which I don't think are used for transformation, right? It was like the feet and then those tabs. So those seem to be there just to be able to attach stuff to him. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, phenomenal little figure. Really dig him. Now here's a fun little group shot of Iguanus with pretty much the closest thing that we've received to Decepticon Pretenders. So here we have the Generations Thunderwing, which is a transforming toy that's... He's very similar to this guy, really, where he has the vehicle mode of, you know, the classic toy, but then the robot mode is based off the Pretender shell. So very, very similar in concept, just, you know, deluxe scale instead of core or legend size. And then over here, this big old chungus right there is Black Shadow, who originally was a retool of Thunderwing. In fact, there is a retool of this toy for Black Shadow, but I don't have that. Instead, this is the Titans Return one, who's a retool of Overlord. Very confusing. You know, not a Pretender in any way either, but still a very, very cool figure. And then we get these little guys who technically are functional Pretenders. They do have a shell that opens, and there's a little robot inside. But I still don't really consider them proper Pretenders because the robot inside, it's not a real transformer. It's just a simplistic little thing that folds up and becomes a symbol, right? The Prime Masters. So really still doesn't scratch that itch. Between being absolutely tiny and not even having like a proper transforming figure inside of it, I still don't really count them as like actual Pretenders. So basically what we get here is just a mishmash of completely different figures that represent classic Pretender characters, but don't actually achieve the gimmick. And, you know, I don't know, you'd think they'd at least try it once, right? I mean, Hasbro and the design team, they're pretty experimental. I'm surprised that in all these years, there have not been any true Pretenders made since the first ones. Unless you count the convention exclusive, but that was really all Fun Pub's thing. I wouldn't really consider that Hasbro's idea. But yeah, it really is a shame, because I think the concept is so cool, and while these figures all have their merits, I mean, these guys I think are pretty much useless, but you know, he's a cool toy, he's a very cool toy, he's an excellent little toy. I still really just feel like we're not seeing these characters live up to their full potential, and it really is a shame. And this completes our look at the new Legacy Iguanus. I have to say, I absolutely love this figure. It just really works for me. It's got that bizarre, you know, reptilian, alien-looking motorcycle mode. It's got this really, really great robot mode that harkens back to the Pretender shell, but also does its own thing, and just looks great. I mean, if this was just a new character that had never existed before and there was no history with him, I'd still think he was great. He is just a very, very cool toy. And even though it might be premature to say this because I haven't reviewed Skywarp yet, I think he's the best core class toy ever made. Like, by a long shot. The engineering, the transformation, the posability, the paint. Phenomenal, phenomenal figure. I think he blows everything out of the water. And luckily, he and his wave mates are starting to show up pretty regularly at Targets here in the US. So if you go out to your local Targets and stuff, you want to try to get these guys quickly, there's a pretty good chance you'll find one. So, you know, I would definitely pick them up. You know, I would get Skywarp too while you're at it. I mean, you can get Hot Rod if you want. I think that's the worst core class toy ever made. But you might feel compelled to pick it up if, you know, for, you know, no reason other than to complete the whole combined sword thing. But, oof, boy, I can't say you'll be happy with that one. But you will be happy with this guy, because he just does everything right. Like, my hang-ups about, you know, the lack of a Pretender feature aside, he's just a really, really good toy. He looks good in every mode. He's very stable, very posable. This has got to be where all the budget for Hot Rod went. Like, he is as good as Hot Rod is bad. So I think that's why the Hot Rod toy came out so terrible, because this guy is just perfect. So I think you'll be very happy if you pick him up. I know I am. I know I'm having a lot of fun with this toy. He's a great display piece, a great action figure, great Transformer, all that. So if you do go and pick him up, I think you'll be very, very pleased with this. Of course, that is just how I feel about Iguanus. So now I want to know what you all think of this toy. Do you think I'm, you know, kind of overdoing it and really gushing over something that's not as good as I might think it is? Or do you agree? Do you think this guy is just really, really well done and, you know, cream of the crop here with Core Class? Any and all feedback is always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this very exciting look at the brand new Transformers Legacy Core Class Iguanus. And with all that said, I will see you next time.